Well, today is the funeral for one of Loeffner's victims. Little Christina Taylor Greene's funeral is today. She's the youngest victim in this Arizona shooting rampage. And a radical so-called church group had planned to protest that funeral and others. But they have now canceled those protests in exchange for some free airtime on two conservative radio talk shows, one of which is national and hosted by a man you may know well, Mike Gallagher, frequent guest of the program, who is one of our Fox News contributors, and he is live with me on the set. And so let's just start with, it's an hour you're giving them. Why'd you do it?
To me, it's a no-brainer, Megan. I think any American, if they had the tool at their disposal to prevent these grieving families from being subjected to these vile people, who wouldn't do this? I mean, it's easy for me. I mean, we've done this before. I did it with the Amish school shooting massacre victims, and I did it with the Virginia Tech massacre victims. You know, these people, the Westboro Baptist Church, they're neither, I don't think they're Baptist or a church.
No.
It's an extended family of the Phelps family.
It's like 18 people.
Yeah.
They're all blood relatives of one another.
The grandkids and the nieces and nephews and all that. Reverend Fred Phelps is sort of the patriarch. Of course they want the attention. They want the publicity. To me, an hour of my airtime on my radio show Monday is insignificant compared to exposing families to this kind of
The argument
anguish.
from the other side is it's encouraging them in the same way where if you pay the ransom to the hostage takers, it just encourages them to take more hostages.
Yeah, in fact, last night Greta said that she called this deal a kind of grotesque blackmail. Well, no, they didn't call us. We called them. You know, the blackmailer doesn't...
But they know. They're not stupid. You know?
These are smart people.
They remember what you did the last two times.
They're all First Amendment lawyers. I mean, and that's why they hurt these families.
Well, but then they have memories. They know what happened the last time. So, you know...
But they're smart.
There is a history.
Of course there is, and they know where to stand, and they know how to do the most damage to these poor families. And my goal, listen, if I can use a radio show like mine to prevent this terrible atrocity from occurring, I'm proud of that. And you know, it's especially good timing considering how my business, talk radio, has been under siege since Jared Loeffner's murderous rampage as somehow being responsible for what he did.
We're supposed to be dialing back the vitriolic rhetoric.
Well, we did.
Well, Bobby, you're going to put on Shirley Phelps Roper?
And she's going to be challenged by the great Dinesh D'Souza, who's the president of King's College here in New York. He's the author of What's So Great About Christianity. He's a great Christian mind, and this guy is going to refute and debate in a calm and civil way what these people have to say.
But see, now, if they went out to this funeral or I mean, obviously, nobody wants to see them at this funeral. Okay, so that's obvious. And they can't get within, the law now says in Arizona within 300 feet that the church only ever goes within 1,000 feet.
Right.
Again, church goes within 1,000 feet of the funeral. So, but if they went, there were many protest groups that were planning on blocking them. You had, in other funerals, we've seen the Patriot National Guard that goes out there, the motorcycle guys.
Right.
Then there was the Divine Guard, which is more than 3,000 people who have committed to donning white outfits with angel wings to block those protesters from the views of the families. There are other ways without giving them the platform of a national radio show to spew what we all know is going to be hate.
Megan, this is very personal for me. When my wife died a couple of years ago, after I'd had some confrontations with these people, my city's police department got word that they were thinking about protesting my Denise's funeral. So my 4 sons said, okay, Dad, fine, we'll bring baseball bats to the funeral. Now, let me tell you something. For me to be going through the anguish of losing my wife and then worrying about my kids going after them with baseball bats, or the well-meaning actions of the Patriot Guard putting up blankets and holding down, it's all a disruption, and it was the last thing I wanted to deal with.
You've put a stop to it. I mean, they're not going. They're not going to Christina's funeral. They're not going to any of the Arizona funerals.
There are a couple of local shows, I think one in Arizona, I think one in Canada, where they said they wouldn't go to Christina's funeral, but with my show, they're not going to go to Arizona.
So
they're not going
you have
anywhere.
Gotten them out of every single Arizona funeral.
They have signed a deal, a contract, and they did this before, and they upheld the contract. I don't doubt that they'll do it. They're not going to go to Arizona. They're going to be with me here in New York City for 1 hour on Monday with Dinesh D'Souza. We're going to give them their airtime and keep those families from being exposed to their hatefulness. And I'm very proud to work in a business that's doing that.
Did you get pushback from your station on it?
I did. The manager initially said no, and in fact, I was very distressed about it. We kept pushing. We had behind-the-scenes meetings, and finally, my management said, "All right, if you get a Christian voice, a theologian, an intellectual who can combat them and give some balance, we'll go ahead." Well, that's what we got with Dinesh D'Souza.
Let me ask you this: would you encourage people not to listen to your show on Monday for that 1 hour. What is it, between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m.?
It's going to air, the show airs 9 to noon Eastern, but different times around the country.
Okay.
It's going to be
Would
11
you
to noon.
encourage people not to listen to the Mike Gallagher show for that one morning?
Hey, I can't control what people do or don't do. I had a lot of listeners today say, we will proudly have your station turned on, Mike, but we're going to put the volume down. So I think as long as the station's on, even if the volume is on, it counts. Listen, people got to do what they got to do.
Well, maybe they could reward you by tuning in droves the next day.
The next day,
I mean,
or the next
one could
hour.
think of many ways they could send you a message about how they feel.
I understand the criticism, Megan. I just wish people would put themselves in my shoes and know that as a family member who might have had to be exposed to these people, listen, I'm glad to use my little radio show to keep this from happening for one day. I'm proud of it and glad they're not going to go to Arizona.
And look at this, as if on cue, Mike. These are Christina's parents arriving at their daughter's funeral. There is her mother, who spoke with Gretchen Carlson the day after this tragedy, and there is her father, who spoke with me.
And this is a private moment. They have a right to mourn with dignity and not to be disrupted by these horrible people. It just breaks my heart, and our hearts go out to all of these families and the community.
And that's her older brother. He was 2 years older than she was. And one has to wonder, if we can see that picture just one more time, one has to wonder, to those who would criticize you, what this moment would be like. So hard for them already. The death of little Christina, and this 9/11 flag that was at Ground Zero brought there. That was her birthday, brought there to honor her and the American resilience. How this would have changed their moment if they had to go past the folks from the Westboro, so-called Baptist church spewing their hate.
I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to prevent that from having happened.
Right or wrong, you have done that, Mike, and I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. All the best.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks.
We'll be right back.
During my service in the United States Congress, I took the initiative in creating the Internet, creating the Internet, creating the Internet, creating the Internet.